Hello, and welcome to Cooking with Todd. This is Todd. For today's video, I am going to be making some home-canned baked beans that are absolutely the best, in my opinion. They're so much better than anything you'll ever find in the store. For this, you're going to need some navy beans. I have 4 pounds of navy beans here. You're going to need 2 quarts of tomato juice and 1 quart of tomato sauce. I have a half can here of crushed tomatoes that I'm going to mix with a little bit of water and one of these tomato sauces here to make some juice. And these need to be used up anyways, as they're going on about 1.5 years out of date. But that is a best by date, not a use by date, so these are still fine. You're also going to need 4 tablespoons of apple cider vinegar, 4 tablespoons of liquid smoke. You're also going to need 3/4 cups of molasses and 2 cups of sugar. I don't have those out right now, but those are going to be needed. You're going to need 2 teaspoons of ground mustard, half a teaspoon of ground nutmeg, 1 teaspoon of allspice, half a teaspoon of ground clove, 1 teaspoon of salt, and 2 teaspoons of black pepper. To get started, I'm going to go ahead and get my tomato sauce and crushed tomatoes in my pan with some additional water to make the makeshift tomato juice. And I will go ahead and get my camera angle switched over to my pot and get everything mixed together. And I just remembered one last thing you are going to need is some onion. And that's going to be finely diced. For this today, I'm going to use some minced onion that is dried, and that's just what I prefer to use. You can use fresh onion if you would prefer, but I'm going to add about 3/4 of a teaspoon of that to every jar. And these are going to be canned in pint jars. You can also do these in quart jars if you would prefer that way. I just tend to use a single jar for a meal, so if I would end up using 2 in the future, I would start canning this in quart, but I will get into the details of that later on in the video. Okay, so I got my camera angle switched over, and I'm going to go ahead and get the tomato sauce here added into the pot. And I am just using a 8-quart pot here. You're not going to need nearly this much room for all this, but it's the smallest pot I have that will fit all of this. So I'm going to go ahead and just get this added in. And now I'm going to go ahead and just rinse all this stuff out with that extra water that I need to add. Okay, so I also ended up getting my molasses measured out here too, and I'm going to go ahead and dump that in. And this really comes in handy for things like this. I'm going to grab a rubber spatula, just get the extra off of there, and throw that in the sink. And I'm going to go ahead and get my sugar here and put in 2 cups of that, which it looks like I'm going to have exactly enough. Maybe a little less than enough, but that's fine. And then I'm going to go ahead and add in all of my seasonings. which is going to be half a teaspoon of ground nutmeg. I'm going a little over on that, but that's fine. Half a teaspoon of the ground clove. 2 teaspoons of ground mustard. 1 teaspoon of the allspice. 1 teaspoon of salt. And the 2 teaspoons of black pepper. I'm also going to go ahead and add in the 4 tablespoons of liquid smoke. Which I'm going to use a little measuring glass here for that. I got 6 tablespoons left in here. I'm just going to go ahead and add in the extra. It's not really going to hurt anything. And that is that. The 2 tablespoons of apple cider vinegar. Going to go ahead and just use the same measuring glass here and just squeeze that in. And the minced onion is going to be added to individual jars, not into the sauce. I'm going to go ahead and just stir this up, turn my heat on high, bring this up to a simmer, and then put my lid on it and cut the heat. And then I'm going to go ahead and get started on the beans, but I'm going to bring you guys back after this comes up to a simmer and I'm getting ready to start the beans. Okay, so this is just getting ready to come up to a simmer. I'm going to go ahead and cut the heat to this. The residual heat left in the burner should bring it up to that boil. I'm going to go ahead and grab my large 12-quart pot here and set that aside. I'm going to go ahead and grab my colander. And I am going to go ahead and sort my beans. Look for any rocks or any half pieces of bean that I would not want in my baked beans. Also look for any shriveled up beans and get rid of those too. And also kind of looking for beans like that. It's a little moldy. Get rid of that one. Alright, this one looks fine now. Minus a bean I just found. I'm going to go ahead and just dump that into the pot and go ahead and keep on sorting through every bag. This one has a lot of bad beans in it. Wish I would have looked at the bag before I bought it. But live and learn. Also kind of looking for any of the discolored ones, like this. This bag here has a lot of discolored beans. Guess that's what you kind of get when you buy a $1 bag of beans. Well, it was $1 when I bought the bag about 1.5 years ago. Now it's like $2 a bag. But I'm just going to try and find any bad beans that I might have, and I will go ahead and bring you back when I get ready to do the next step. Okay, so I got my beans sorted here, and now what I'm going to do is go ahead and add in enough water to cover the tops of the beans, about 3 inches, and I will bring you back. Okay, so I have enough water in here now. I'm going to go ahead and just mix this by hand right quick and look for any beans that may float to the surface. Also pull out any of the bean skins or whatever that part of the bean would be called that may float, which it looks like I don't have any of those. So I'm going to go ahead and turn this on high, and I'm going to bring this up to a boil. And when it comes up to a rolling boil, I'm going to boil it for 5 minutes, and then I'm going to go ahead and add the lid and let it sit for 1 hour, as I am doing the quick soak method. Alternatively, you could use the overnight soak method, which is exactly as it says. You let the beans soak overnight and you cook them the next day. But I am going for the faster method today, so that's what I'm going to do. I will go ahead and bring you back when this is done, and when I come back, I'm going to go ahead and drain these and get everything ready to can. Okay, so I'm back with a little update. These have been boiling now for a little over 5 minutes, and don't know if you can really see in the pot that well, but the beans are now well above the line of the water. So I am going to add in about 3/4 of a gallon of additional water and go ahead and start my timer for 1 hour now. Okay, so I'm back, and these have soaked now for 1 hour, and as you can see, they have gotten significantly bigger, and there's probably about 1 inch of water on top of these beans, so it was a good thing I added that extra water to the pot after they came up to a boil. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to drain these, and to do that, I'm just going to put my colander like that over my pot and drain it like that, as there's way too many beans to be able to just put it right through my colander without them overflowing everywhere. So I'm going to go ahead and drain those and rinse those off with some hot water. And to rinse those off, I'm going to fill it up to above the level of the beans with some hot water. Just kind of stir it around a little bit to rinse the individual beans off, and then drain it again. And then I'm going to go ahead and bring you back and start filling up my jars. Okay, so I'm back, and I have my beans over here, and they have been drained and rinsed. I ended up rinsing them twice just because. And I also have my canner over here on my stove on a medium-low heat just to keep the water warm. And I am going to go ahead and start packing my jars with beans. And I am going to fill them right in between the 1 cup or 8 ounce mark and the, I think that's a 10 ounce mark right there. So I'm going to fill it up right in between there. I'm probably going to end up just going for 1 cup because I kind of like a lot of sauce with mine. But that's what I'm going to aim for, about 1 cup of beans per jar. And I have my canning funnel here, which comes in really handy. And I also have my dried minced onion right here, which I'm going to add 1 tablespoon per jar after I add my beans. I also have my white vinegar here just to clean the rims of my jars after I add everything into my jars. And I also have about 1/4 cup of white vinegar in my canner, which helps prevent clouding of the jars on the outside from minerals and stuff that's in your tap water. So I'm going to go ahead and just start filling my jars. And I'm probably going to go ahead and grab a 1 cup measuring cup, so I am not using a ladle going at it multiple times. Go ahead and just add in 1 cup like that. And that fills it right around where I was wanting it to be filled. So that's good. I'm going to set that in the back and just keep filling my jars like this. And I only have 15 pint jars. Sad to say, that's all I have right now. Everything else has food in it, which I guess I shouldn't be sad to say. I only have 15 jars, but considering my shelves can hold quite a bit, it is kind of sad to say that I could fit about 15 more cases, but I just haven't been buying jars that much lately, so I am probably going to pull out some of my smooth-sided jars that I like to reserve for things like pumpkin puree or things that I don't really use the gradient that is on the traditional jar. Which that is the main reason I use the traditional jar and not the smooth-sided for everything. Plus, the smooth-sided is just a hair more expensive than the regular jar. So I will admit though, the smooth-sided jar does allow me to fit that last jar in the individual layers a little smoother or easier because I don't have the raised edges on the side of the jar getting in the way. That right there is really the only advantage of those for me. Instead of fitting 18, I can fit 20 because my canner fits 2 layers of pint jars. And if I end up with any extra beans, I will probably end up putting those in quart jars and doing that in another batch. The last couple jars that I can fit in my canner, I have some sweet potatoes that I want to do a test run on. So I'm going to probably peel and dice those up, throw those in a jar with some heavy syrup, and just do a trial run of those for possibly a future video. I don't know, but sweet potatoes in my area are fairly cheap right now per pound, as it typically is like that around this time of the year. But it looks like I'll have enough beans for maybe 2 or 3 more. I'm going to say about 4 jars worth, so I'll probably get 2 quarts out of all that bean that I have left over there. So now that I got all my jars filled, I'm going to go ahead and add in a level scoop of my dried minced onion here to every jar. And like I said, I don't know why I just closed that, but like I said, if you would want to use fresh onion, you can most certainly do that. I just didn't feel like pulling out and dirtying my vegetable chopper to do that, so I am just dirtying a measuring spoon that I've used a couple times already today for this recipe, so I've only dirtied one utensil for multiple things today, which is a plus, because who loves doing dishes, right? So I'm going to go ahead and just get these filled up with onion, and then I will go ahead and bring you back when I'm going to add my sauce to the jars and let you guys know what I changed in that sauce recipe. Okay, so I'm back. I have my sauce out now, and all my jars have the minced onion in it. And I'm going to go ahead and just let you guys know that I did end up adding an additional 3/4 teaspoons of allspice, 1/2 teaspoon of nutmeg, 1/2 teaspoon of clove, 2 teaspoons of salt, 1/4 cup of molasses, and 1/4 cup of sugar. So that was all additional to what I originally stated at the very beginning of the video. I also added in addition to everything that I mentioned at the beginning of the video, 1 teaspoon of MSG, which you do not need to use, 2 teaspoons of onion powder, and 1 teaspoon of garlic powder. And that was only because I tasted it and it tasted just a little bland, so I added all the extra stuff in there. And I forgot the onion powder and garlic powder at the beginning of the video, so I'm going to go ahead and fill my jars to about 1 inch of headspace, in between 3/4 and 1 inch. I'm going to aim for about 3/4 because I never debubble my jars. There's really no point. The contents in the jar is going to be boiling anyways during the processing, so any air that's in the bottom of the jar is going to come to the top anyways, so there's no point in my mind to debubble anything. So, that being said, I'm going to go ahead and just fill my jars up to 3/4 inch headspace. And the only time I really would ever really consider to debubble my jars is whenever I'm trying to mix in things into my jar after I add in liquid. So like this, what I would want to probably mix in would be my minced onion, so it's not just sitting on top of the beans. But then again, the flavors in the onion is going to be in the sauce, and the sauce is everywhere, so that doesn't really matter to me. So I'm probably not going to bother debubbling or stirring this in the jar. But I'm going to go ahead and fill all of these up, and I am looking to fill, let me grab a jar with no liquid in it. I'm looking to fill it up to this band right here underneath the threads. That is what I am going for headspace. But I'm going to go ahead and add the sauce into all my jars, just like this. And in my case, that's 2 ladlefuls to fill it up to where I want it to be filled. So I'm going to go ahead and just bring you guys back when it's time for me to get everything else going. Okay, so here is a perfect example for when I would definitely want to debubble. I'm going to try and, like, see, you can see this right here, how the liquid did not get all the way down, unlike, and also this one too. But in some jars, like this one, liquid got all the way down. So I am probably going to end up debubbling these just because I want to get as much liquid in these jars as I possibly can, because that is where the flavor is. So these I probably end up will debubbling, but other things I normally don't. So just wanted to throw that out there as a quick update. Okay, so I'm back, and I just wanted to show you guys what I like to use to debubble. It's just a simple 12-inch bamboo skewer, and to debubble, I just stick it right in the jar and just kind of stir everything. And that helps everything come to the surface and get liquid all the way in to the very bottom of every jar. And sometimes if you just stick it down right in the middle, it's difficult to stir and you could break the skewers. So sometimes I like to go down on the side like this and stir like this and then work my way into the center. But since the sauce wasn't getting all the way around the beans and all the way down to the bottom and everything, it was just sitting on top kind of. That's why I've decided to go ahead and debubble or stir the beans. But if I'm doing something like canned meat, like chicken or pork or beef or something, or just regular beans with water, or kind of like my black beans, I just throw in a tablespoon of this minced onion that I used here for these. I'll throw in a tablespoon of that into every jar, 1 cup of bean, and top it off with water, and that's it. I don't even bother debubbling that. And I also throw in about, I think, 3/4 teaspoon of coarse salt, but there's no point in debubbling the beans because it's just water and it's not thick and viscous like this. So that's why I kind of tend to debubble this versus just regular beans with water. But as you can see, all these jars were filled up a little higher, about right to here. And now that I've stirred them, the liquid's down to like right here, the top of the gradient. So by stirring, I'm definitely going to be able to add more sauce into the beans. So that's going to be good. As it is a baked bean, you kind of want the sauce to be with it. And if I end up with any extra sauce, which I don't even think I'm going to have enough to do my quarts, so I'm probably going to just can those as plain navy beans to use in other recipes that would call for a white bean. So that's probably what I'm going to do with those. I didn't really need many baked beans anyways, but I'm expecting to use some of this over the holidays this year, so by making this is going to ensure that I'm going to have some throughout the year and I don't have to can any for quite a while, so that'll be nice. But now I'm going to go ahead and just top these off with sauce and I will bring you back. Okay, so I went ahead and got my canner turned on high now, and I am going to go ahead and get my jars finished here. I went ahead and got everything filled up with sauce to my desired amount of headspace, which is about 3/4 to 1 inch. What I just did is soaked a paper towel in some white vinegar, and that is to clean the rims of the jars off. And I'm going to go ahead and just plop that in the canner right there. And you want to wipe the rim of your jars off to help ensure a proper seal. And put your lid on and then just finger tight on your band. And how I like to do my bands is I spin it until it won't spin anymore, just with like one or two fingers like that. Then I just give it a little tug. That's my finger tight. I've really had no issues with doing it that way. So that's how I like to do mine. And I mean, this is probably one of the, that one can use a little more sauce, so I'll just pour a little in. It's a little easier to do it out of a gallon I ended up switching it out of the stock pot into the gallon. So I'm going to go ahead and just put those in there. And I'm probably going to end up doing the test batch of sweet potatoes in with my quart jars when I do those next, as that's what I'm going to use for the holidays this year. Be a little easier to do out of quart jars instead of using like 4 pint jars. So that's probably what I'm going to do with that. I'm going to go ahead and just pause this right quick, and I will bring you back when I am getting ready to switch it over for processing. Okay, so I am back, and my canner is now full with all of my pint jars that I'm doing. I do have, I'm going to say, I can't really pick it up in my camera, but that much and beans left. So I'll probably get maybe 3 quart jars out of that, if that. So that'll be enough for the holidays this year in quart jars. So this right here will end up going on my shelf. But I'm going to go ahead and just let this come up to a boil, and it's going to, this right here, safety valve so you can't open the lid. Once that pops up, I like to set a timer for 10 minutes. Some people will set a timer for 10 minutes right when they see steam coming out of the vent. I like to wait until the safety pops, then start my timer for 10 minutes to let steam vent. And after the 10 minutes is up, I go ahead and switch that dial right there to 2, and that corresponds to the 2 on that gauge right there, which is 10 to 13 pounds of pressure, I think. Yeah, I think that's right. But I normally go for 11 on that gauge, which is right in the middle of the 2. And I'm going to process these, since these are pints, for 75 minutes. That's 1 hour and 15 minutes. And if I was doing these in quarts, which I'm going to do on my second batch, that is going to be processed for 90 minutes. So, that being said, and when my timer for the processing goes off, I cut the heat. I leave my gauge here alone. Don't touch that. If you rapidly release the pressure, it causes the stuff in the jars to rapidly boil. And it's not even a rolling boil. It's beyond a rolling boil. And so just leave your gauges alone until it completely drops in pressure. I like to let it sit for half an hour. Typically around 22 minutes is when my safety here will drop down, and it's safe at that point to remove my jars. But I just like to wait half an hour. That's a safe bet for me. And after that, I take it out and I can go ahead and start another batch. I've never had an issue with my jars bursting or rupturing or whatever because of thermal shock when I start a second batch right after my canner is done. I have never had an issue with putting warm product in jars and putting them right in my canner. Never had any issues, and I've used my jars multiple times, so it's not a timed, like you can only do it a certain amount of time and then it will happen. I've never had it happen, and I've used some of my jars probably 30 times already and have never had a jar fail or explode or whatever because of thermal shock. So that's something that I do. If you want to wait for your canner to completely cool before you start it, before you start your second batch or third batch, whatever, you do you. But in my experience, I have never had an issue with my jars thermally shocking and rupturing in my canner. I've only ever had one issue where a jar, the lid blew off. I don't know if that was because I didn't put it on tight enough, or if it was because the lid was bad. But that also could have been in my part because I put too many beans in a jar, so there was no more room for it to expand, and the lid was the weakest link, not the glass jar. So I guess that's pretty much all. I'm probably going to just go ahead and just wrap this video up right now. So if you enjoyed this video, go ahead and smash that like button. If you enjoyed the content I'm putting out, go ahead and smash that subscribe button. And as always, thank you for coming along with me on this journey of mine.